All right, friends, we are here today to draw out the life cycle of the malaria parasite Plasmodium falciparum. And Plasmodium falciparum is one of 4 major species, and there's several minor species of Plasmodium. These are all protists of the SAR clade alveolata. And Plasmodium falciparum, as a causal agent of malaria, is a major killer in the developing world and in the tropical world. So the life cycle is rather complicated, got several different spore stages that we need to get through. So let's go ahead and get started by drawing not a parasite, but a mosquito. So we'll give her 6 legs. And some wings. And why do I say her? Because this is a female Anopheles mosquito. And the genus Anopheles has several species. Anopheles gambii is the most common one in Africa, but there are many other species. And it is only the female mosquitoes that will take a blood meal. So male mosquitoes do not. All right, so we've got this mosquito, and she's got something inside of her that is going to be injected into our unwitting malaria sufferer. So we need a person. Here's our person. And that person doesn't really need a whole lot to contract malaria. They just need a bloodstream and a liver. So let's give them a bloodstream and a liver. All right, so the first thing that's going to happen is our female Anopheles mosquito is going to inject sporozoites into the human bloodstream. So this first stage is called sporozoites, at least from where we're entering the deal. And we're not necessarily following any particular blood vessels, but we're gonna make our way to the liver. And you might say, well, why is she injecting? Isn't she drinking the blood in order to take a meal? And the answer is yes, she is doing that. But mosquitoes often, it is in their best interest not to be detected when they are biting. They do not want you to feel their feeding, because if you feel a mosquito biting you, what are you gonna do? You're gonna swat that mosquito and you're gonna kill her. And that's not really following the correct rules of engagement for evolutionary best practices. So she will inject a little anesthetic to let so that you won't feel her biting you and feeding upon you. So what will she do? When she's doing that, she will inadvertently inject not only that anesthetic, but she will also inject those sporozoites of the Plasmodium falciparum. Okay, so second thing that happens, the sporozoites enter liver cells, and they undergo multiple rounds of mitosis. So they're producing lots and lots of daughter cells. And this process is called schizogony. So you may be familiar with this word root schizo, referring to several of something. So like schizophrenia used to be known as multiple personality disorder. Now that's a bit of a dated way of looking at things and not quite correct. But if schizo makes you think multiple, then that could be helpful to you. So schizogony produces the next spore stage, which are called merozoites. And how are you supposed to remember merozoites? Well, if you can remember that when large biological molecules are made up of smaller parts, they are called monomers. And when we have many of these monomers together, they're called polymers. So we know mono and poly mean one and many respectively, but what does mer mean? Mer means part. So merozoites are these little pieces, parts, spores that enter the bloodstream again in legions. So these merozoites are going to enter the bloodstream once again. Okay. Step 3, merozoites are going to burrow into the red blood cells, which I'm going to abbreviate as RBCs, erythrocytes, red blood cells. And they do that using something that we find, which is a synapomorphy of the apicomplexa, which is an apical complex. Using the apical complex, it's kind of like a little molecular drill bit that they use to burrow into red blood cells. They also use, the sporozoites also have this apical complex, which they use to burrow into the liver cells. Anyway, so merozoites burrow into the red blood cells using that apical complex, and they proliferate in those red blood cells. While they're doing that, there is a synchronized rupture of the red blood cells, which leads to reinfection of other RBCs, as well as liver cells. So the merozoites can also reinfect liver cells. And this synchronized rupture of the red blood cells is leads to a very characteristic symptomatology of malaria, which is going through these cycles of fever and chills. And they happen on with rather distinctive patterns, maybe once a day, maybe twice a day. I can't remember. I think it's just a 24-hour cycle for falciparum malaria. But this is why malaria is known for causing very, very distinct cycles of fever, feeling feverish, feeling very, very hot, and chills. The rupture is what leads to the chills. And as a person who once had malaria, when I was a Peace Corps volunteer, I contracted malaria. And I can tell you the chills were no joke. I lived in Niger, West Africa, which is one of the hottest, driest countries in the world. And even though it was about 110, 115 on this particular day, I put on every article of clothing that I had, wrapped up in my sleeping bag and went and sat out in the sun because I just felt so very, very cold. So the chills are no joke. Fortunately, I was able to get treated fairly quickly, so I did not have to suffer with malaria for very long because I did have access to Peace Corps medical care. But for a lot of people, they do not have those benefits. And so malaria is a very devastating disease. All right, so step 4, some of the merozoites. Progress to form gametocytes. And the gametocytes are what are going to turn into the gametes eventually. And these do have oogamy, so they have male and female gametes. But as they're getting ready to do that, we need to have another Anopheles mosquito. Is going to bite, and she is going to ingest some of these gametocytes. And in the female, so we're back into the mosquito. The gametocytes will form male and female gametes, which fuse to form the thing that gametes always fuse to form, which is a zygote. Step 7. The zygote burrows into the digestive tract, of the mosquito, and forms what's known as an oocyst. And here, this may be one of the first times that we see this word prefix oo, which is 2 O's together. It looks like it says ooh, but it's really oo. Oo refers to eggs, anything to do with eggs. Oogenesis is egg formation. For example, oogamy, we've talked about briefly before. But this oocyst is then going to be inside the, burrowed into the lining of the digestive tract. And then our last step is that oocyst is going to release new sporozoites which migrate to the mosquito's salivary glands, and we have completed the cycle, because then another person comes along and they get bitten by an infected Anopheles mosquito, and the cycle continues. So, interesting fact about this is that what was I going to say? The interesting fact. Oh dear. I guess it wasn't that interesting. Or was it? Oh, what I was going to say is the mosquito is considered to be the primary host, because in pathology, in parasitology, the primary host is the one in which the sexual life cycle is completed. And because the gametes are ingested by the mosquito, and that's where fertilization takes place. The mosquito is the primary host, and humans are the secondary host. So that was the interesting thing I was going to bring up. So anyway, there you have it. There is your life cycle of the malaria parasite, Anopheles, Plasmodium falciparum, which is in the alveolata in the phylum Apicomplexa.